Olá, boa tarde a todas as pessoas presentes neste encontro que tece mundos e esperanças. Sejam muito bem-vindas e bem-vindos ao 6º Congresso Internacional Brasil em Teias Culturais, Palestinidades, realizado pelo Programa de Pós-Graduação em Crítica Cultural do Departamento de Linguística, Literatura e Arte da UNEB, Campus 2, Alagoinhas, Bahia. Meu nome é Magnólia Silva Queiroz, eu sou doutoranda em Crítica Cultural no programa de Pós-Crítica do DLL Arts, Campus 2 da UNEB, em Alagoinhas. Para quem não pode me ver, compartilhe uma autodescrição. Eu sou uma mulher branca, meus cabelos estão escovados e caem suavemente pelos meus ombros. Eu uso óculos de armação na cor preta e estou com vestido na cor branca. Antes de iniciarmos, informo que hoje nossa mesa ela terá uma dinâmica diferenciada, pois Lina Abojaradê fala árabe e dialogará conosco em inglês. Por isso, farei minhas falas de maneira pausada para que possamos garantir a tradução e tornar nosso diálogo plenamente acessível. As nossas palestrantes deste simpósio são a jornalista, fotógrafa e pesquisadora Juliana Santores Miranda e a artista, cineasta e ativista Lina Abojaradem. Sejam bem-vindas. Gostaria também de apresentar e agradecer às tradutoras que nos acompanham nessa mesa, Laína Santos da Silva e Poliana Batista Sales, responsáveis por tornar este encontro verdadeiramente multilingüe e plural. Agradecemos profundamente o trabalho de vocês. Poliana?
Boa tarde a todos. Good afternoon. Laina?
Good afternoon. My name is Laina.
A tradução, Polly.
Desculpa, você não vai apresentar primeiro?
Ok, então, vamos lá.
ok. Só um momento.
Nós estamos aqui e somos mais uma vez reunidos e reunidas, né, para entrelaçar conhecimentos sobre palestinidades e pensar palestinidades e ampliar o debate sobre a causa palestina e, ao mesmo tempo, refletir sobre todas as geografias e todos os corpos que lutam por existência, por voz e por dignidade. Então, nosso simpósio, que foi iniciado ontem, intitulado Poéticas, Imagens e Saberes, Narrativas da Palestina e do Sul Global, nasceu dos estudos desenvolvidos no projeto Oriente pelo Cinema, vinculado ao Laboratório de Audiovisual Lab Cinema Pós-Crítica e coordenado pelo professor Dr. Osmar Moreira. E a partir desse horizonte, buscamos discutir o potencial das artes visuais, das poéticas e dos saberes contracoloniais como formas de resistência às múltiplas violências impetradas pelo sionismo, pelo fascismo, por potências econômicas e por estados imperialistas, agentes que financiam o massacre étnico na faixa de Gaza e os conflitos que se desdobram em tantas regiões do mundo. São essas mesmas forças que sustentam a necropolítica responsável por segregar e exterminar populações no sul global, entre elas os povos originários e as comunidades periféricas. Então, para hoje, vamos apresentar a nossa mesa Saberes e a arte resistem à dominação cultural na Palestina e no Sul Global, que foi proposta pelos doutorandos Evanildes Teixeira da Silva, Edmário Nascimento da Silva e por mim, Magnólia Silva Queiroz.
We are once again gathered to interweave knowledge about Palestinians. To think about Palestine is to broaden the debate on the Palestinian cause and at the same time reflect on all geographies and all bodies that fight for existence, voice, and dignity. Our symposium started yesterday, which is entitled as Poetics, Images, and Knowledge, Narratives of Palestine and the Global South. And it is born from the studies developed in the project Oriented by Cinema, linked to the Audiovisual Laboratory and coordinated by the PhD professor Osmar Moreira dos Santos. From this horizon, we seek to discuss the potential of visual arts poetics, and counter-colonial knowledge as forms of resistance to the multiple violence imposed by Zionism, fascist, economic powers, and imperialist states. Agents who finance the ethnic massacre in the Gaza Strip and the conflicts unfold in so many regions of the world. It is the same force that sustained the necropolitics responsible for segregating and exterminating populations in Global South, among them the original people and communities. For today, we present the table Knowledge and Art Resist Cultural Domination in Palestine and the Global South, proposed by doctorate students Evanildes Teixeira da Silva, Edmário Nascimento da Silva, and Magnolia Silva Queiroz.
Ok, obrigada, Polly. Então, daremos continuidade ao nosso debate com a participação de Juliana Santores Miranda, que é jornalista, fotógrafa, mestra e doutoranda em comunicação pelo PPG-COM. Sua comunicação se intitula A Memória e a Resistência Palestina, a partir do filme O Sal desse Mar. Seja muito bem-vinda mais uma vez, Juliana.
Juliana researches the Middle East and communication since 2017 and develops works with special attention to the humanitarian issues affecting the Kurdish and Palestinian people, themes that constitute the core of her studies. She is a member of the research groups Images in Conflict, Aesthetics and Politics in Middle Eastern Cinema, and the Interdisciplinary Research Center for Kurdish Studies. With the word, Juliana.
Hello, everyone. Are you listening to me?
Yes, Juliana.
Okay.
You can go ahead.
So thank you. It's an honor to be here at this table to discuss how knowledge and art serve as tools to resist cultural domination. And are you seeing my slides?
Just a moment, please. Okay, now we can see it.
Okay. So my presentation today is based on this paper. You can read the title on the screen. And in fact, I studied the representation of the Kurdish people in audiovisual media and communication. But since I have been working on the study of Orientalism in the media since 2017, I studied Palestinian cinema to co-supervise a cinema student in the last year. And besides my solidarity with the cause, that is how this article came about. And I am part of the two research groups that Poliana says to you. I can share the links after my speech on the chat. And well, it's impossible to begin without acknowledging the context in which we gather. We are speaking at a time when the humanitarian crisis in Palestine has reached alarming proportions since October 2023. And with the attempted erasure of Palestinian people and culture, cinema produced by Palestinians becomes not just entertainment, but a vital resource for the construction of representation and memory. So I am not the only one author of this article, okay? You can read the other names on the screen. And I wish I could bring to you all my reading notes about these books, but I am talking about 50 pages at least. So I will reduce a lot here. You can see some books that are very important for this article and for this research. And still about the subject today, To explore this subject, I want to take you through the film South of the Sea, directed by Animari Jassir. This was the first featured film directed by a Palestinian woman. But before talk about the movie, I want to bring to you some highlights, especially about this book, Dreams of a Nation on Palestinian Cinema. Well, this is the synopsis of the book. Over the last quarter century, Palestinian cinema has emerged as a major artistic force on the global scene, deeply rooted in the historic struggles for national self-determination. This cinema is the single most important artistic expression of a much maligned people. In Dreams of a Nation, filmmakers, critics, and scholars discuss the extraordinary social and artistic significance of Palestinian film. It is the only volume of its kind in any language. So the director of South of the Sea, Animari Jassir, is one of the authors in this book too. And in her essay, she says, her essay is, the title is For Cultural Purpose Only, Curating a Palestinian Film Festival. She says this, with cameras, we tell our own stories, represent our experiences, and resist being made invisible. So, other highlights, we have this Brazilian professor that talk about the contest, politic contest, and he says, for those who accept the fundamental principles of international humanitarian law, there is only one way to analyze the Palestine-Israel conflict with any objectivity and seriousness. It is a conflict between colonizers and the colonized. On one side, the original and native population, now as the Palestinian people. On the other, the colonizers, foreigners who moved from Europe with the support of the British Empire and other imperialist powers to occupy and conquer the Palestinian homeland through war. The Palestinians are a people who, until the late 19th and early 20th centuries, were composed of Muslims, Christians, Jews, and others. To be Palestinian meant belonging to a land, a people, a territory, a nation. Being Palestinian was not a matter of belonging to this or that religion. And other highlights, we have Edward Said. In fact, the whole history of Palestinian struggle has to do with the desire to be visible. He's talking about the Palestinian cinema in this case. And the Palestinian cinema provides a visual alternative, a visual articulation, a visible incarnation of Palestinian existence in the years since 1948, the year of the destruction of Palestine, and the dispersal and dispossession of the Palestinians as terrorists, as violent people, by trying to articulate a counter-narrative and a counter-identity. These films represent a collective identity. And to call the place Palestine and not Israel or Zion is already an act of political will, Edward Said says. So why this film? Why South of the Sea? This film perfectly illustrates the theme of our panel, and it challenges the Orientalist and Eurocentric views about Palestine and Middle East. I don't like this term, but I will use in this case. And Animari Jassir used cinema to create a counter-narrative, as we saw in the highlights about the books, a counter-narrative that resists the invisibility imposed on the Palestinian people. The cinema, particularly Palestinian cinema, works as a form of resistance against cultural erasure, colonial domination, and the ongoing attempt to control not only land, but also narrative, memory, and imagination. Well, I was talking about the central trauma in the Palestinian history. As you know, is the Nakba. And this is very important for Palestinian cinema. The scholar Hamid Dabashi argues that this trauma is the defining moment of the Palestinian cinema, unlike other national cinemas that reflect an existing state. Palestinian cinema often functions to construct the nation in the collective imagination because the territory itself is occupied or fragmented. So, historically, Palestinian cinema began as a tool for documenting battles and serving as counter-propaganda. However, directors like Annemar Jassir represent a shift. They move away from purely didactic films to tell human stories that are political precisely because they are human. So, for Palestinians in the diaspora, the country consists of a territory that is often only virtually demarcated. Cinema becomes the space where this virtual nation is made real. It is a form of cultural resistance that refuses to cut the link with the land. So, South of the Sea is the first feature of this director, and historically the first Palestinian feature directed by a woman. And it won 14 international awards and brought to the screen a narrative that resists the exoticization and simplifications that the Western try to do about the Middle East, and in this case about Palestine. So we have this protagonist, Soraya. She is a 28-year-old woman born in Brooklyn, USA. She represents the third generation of the Nakba, and her family was expelled from Jaffa in 1948. So she returns to Palestine to recover her grandfather's confiscated savings and symbolically to reclaim her family's place in the world. And we have 2 points here. The right of return. There is a powerful moment in the film where someone asks Soraya, why does a young girl like you come to Palestine? Soraya replies, they deny us the right of return. I took it. I took it back. This encapsulates the resistance of the diaspora. She refused to accept the colonial borders that define her as American. She's not American. She is Palestinian, also born in Brooklyn, but still Palestinian. And we have this hybrid identity. Soraya embodies the linguistic and cultural fusion of the exile. She speaks Arabic and English, sometimes mixing in the same sentence these languages. And there is a scene where she says, I'm not a foreigner. You don't tell me what Palestine is. I know Palestine. She wears a t-shirt that says Brooklyn, yet she knows the history of Jaffa better than her friend that was born in Jaffa. This friend has lived in the West Bank his whole life. And this challenges the definition of who is a real Palestinian person. So the journey of Soraya exposes bureaucratic barriers, the checkpoints in Israel, the impossibility of mobility, generational trauma, the fragmentation of Palestinian identity, and the contradictions of being from a place you have never seen before. So This title, South of the Sea, I will jump through the slides now. This title is so significant. The sea represents a border, but also freedom. Soraya has a love-hate relationship with the sea, and it's the place where her grandfather was exiled, yet it is the place where she feels most at home. So it's a complicated relationship and very beautiful too. The opening scene shows Jaffa disappearing from the point of view of exiles forced onto boats during the Nakba. This is black and white picture is the last image many Palestinians saw of their homeland. And for Soraya, the sea represents memory, loss, home, exile, the impossibility of crossing a border that should be natural. So the sea is Palestine, but also is the Nakba, its freedom and confinement, and give to Soraya the memory of what she never lived. She just lived hearing about histories on her family. So, yes, this is an important point. We have to the orange of Palestine. Before the Nakba, these were a primary Palestinian export. The orange appear in the film to symbolize the organic connection between the people and the land. And we have so many symbols during the film. We have to, in this case, we have the t-shirt is written here, Brooklyn in English, and also Brooklyn in Arab. So I was talking about this challenge about language. And in this slide, we have one parallel between Yasser Arafat and the scene that Emad is wearing the kufia, and they will take back what belongs to Soraya. And well, I think that I will show you a moment, 1 minute about the film, okay? So, okay. I need to know if you see the screen. About the movie.
You read, I want to buy my house from you.
Yes.
You can't. The state owns it, and the Jewish National Fund, they won't sell to non-Jews.
I'll convert.
Won't work. היי. מה? נו, אז מתי אני רואה אותך? אני מתגעגעת. נו? מחר. אז מחר. טוב. ביי. You okay?
Yeah. I'm fine. This is my home. It was stolen from my family. So it's for me to decide if you can stay. And you can.
Are you serious?
My father should have been raised in this house, not in a fucking camp.
You want to speak about history, the past. Let's forget it.
Your past is my everyday. My right now. This is not your home.
It is now.
You can stay. If you admit all of this is stolen.
I can stay. This was your grandfather's home. They left.
They were forced to.
بنت الحلال هدي شوي.
They didn't want to leave. My grandfather laid down this floor. What does that mean to you?
She's crazy. I'm extending a hand to you. I invited you to stay. I'm being friendly.
Our windows, our doors, our fucking house. Admit it.
Get out of my house.
Recognize it.
So we have this scene, and it's very symbolic. We have the colors. Soraya is on her grandfather's house that now is occupied by a Israel woman, and this they talk about the past, and Soraya says to this woman, for you it's just past, but it's my daily life, so it's not past, it's in the present, right? And we have this mix of colors, the blue, the orange, and yes, it's very symbolic. And we can talk more during the conversation, but to conclude now, south of DC. Oh, I'm sorry. I think that you are not seeing the PowerPoint anymore, but okay, I will just conclude. Okay, now it's on the screen. So south of DC, tell a story of a woman returning home, and it functions as a mechanism of memory preservation against a hegemonic narrative that seeks to erase the Palestinian past. And the film exposed the apartheid reality, the checkpoints, the ID cards, the inability to move between the West Bank and the sea, but also offers a new imagination, showing Soraya taking her right of return. Jassir invites us to imagine a future where justice is possible. In the context of our conversation here, this film proves that cinema is a weapon, in the good way in this case. It allows the subaltern to speak, and it transforms the virtual nation into a visible reality. The resistance of the Palestinian people is multidimensional. It's political, yes, but also cultural. And as long as films like this are made and discussed, the memory of Palestine cannot be erased. Thank you.
Muito obrigada, Juliana, pela valiosa contribuição e pela profundidade, né, na sua reflexão. Sua fala enriqueceu bastante, né, o nosso debate e mostra a sensibilidade aos modos como as narrativas visuais constroem memória e resistência. Muito obrigada por compartilhar. Para continuarmos o diálogo da nossa mesa, temos a honra de receber a artista, cineasta e ativista Lina Abojaradê. Após a apresentação da mini-bio, com grande satisfação, convidamos Lina para iniciar sua fala.
Lina Abojaradê is a program coordinator at Global Nomads Group and founder of the social organization Art Smile. Lina is a Palestinian artist who, over the past 15 years, has used a diverse artistic language to tell the stories of Palestine and the Middle East. Her production includes award-winning poetry and art videos, controversial comics, and large murals. exhibited in over 12 countries. She is a winner of awards such as the Gashan Kanafani Resistant Art Grant and the Plural Plus Film Festival Award. She also founded the Art Smile Art Center and the social enterprise Talawin, initiatives that use art to empower Palestinian and Syrian refugees in Jordan. Lina holds a degree in architecture and a master's in global affairs. She is originally from Jaffa and currently resides in Jordan. Her presentation is titled Poetics of Resistance, My Art for Palestine. With the word, Nila Abarajade.
Thank you so much for having me and for the lovely introduction. And thank you to Juliana for her presentation. I actually have been meaning to watch Salt of the Sea, but I've been putting it off because I feel like it would be a little bit too painful. I'm originally from Jaffa, and just watching that clip, it felt like someone had taken what's in my heart and, put it through film. So that just shows really the power of art in evoking emotion. So I'm going to share my screen, and my presentation is basically just taking you through the journey of my art and how I found art for Palestine, and how, as a Palestinian living in the diaspora, how I was able to really and get to know my Palestinian heritage, background, culture through my artistic journey. I always say if I wasn't an artist, I wouldn't be an activist for Palestine. So I'm forever grateful for art because it gave me Palestine in a sense. So let me share my screen. Okay, can everyone see my screen? I think everyone can see my screen, right? Okay. So this was my very first painting. And what really inspired me to paint was I had lived and grown, I grew up in the United States as a child. And in 2009, our family relocated from the US back to Jordan, which is the country that I was born in, but I had never really remembered or grew up in. And so this shift really caused a lot of social anxiety in me. And so I bought a watercolor set and I started painting, and I really found magic in the brush strokes. I found magic in the way that art made me feel. And from then on, it's been a love story ever since. And so I started off drawing watercolors, drawing very beautiful scenery, pictures. At that time, I still wasn't really aware of what Palestine meant or what it really meant to be Palestinian. That all changed when I really got to know my grandfather, who in 1948 was expelled from Jaffa. And for the very first time, I had this connection to my homeland, where he would tell us stories of his childhood, where he would tell us about the orange groves and the orchards and the beautiful nature and the sea of Jaffa. And he would tell us about this beautiful, lovely childhood that really was stolen, in a sense, from me and from my father and from my grandfather, who unfortunately passed away, always dreaming of one day returning. The second thing that really awakened my understanding of Palestine was this painting, which one of my school teachers in Jordan showed me. They told me art can be powerful because they saw my paintings and they really saw the potential in me. And they showed me this painting. Now, this painting is by Tamam al-Akhal, who lived through the expulsion of Jaffa, of the inhabitants of Jaffa in 1948. And literally, the people of Jaffa were driven to the sea. And just seeing this painting, I was absolutely fascinated, and I felt the movement. I felt the water spraying on my face. I felt the tragedy. I felt the panic. And I was really transported to that moment. And so even though I had never visited Palestine, in that moment, Palestine was reborn within me, in a sense. And I think there's a writer that really describes this moment of rebirth, where every single Palestinian living in exile in the diaspora, they have this moment where the homeland is reborn in them once again. And so for me, that was this moment. And from this moment, I couldn't simply draw beautiful paintings anymore. For me, art was going to be my tool of resistance, my way to awaken people to this cause. So some of my first earliest drawings were very, let's say, naive, very peaceful. At that time, I was still a teenager, and I didn't really understand the complexities. I saw the world as a lovely place that where one day justice will prevail. And you could really see that through the symbolism that I was using. The doves, the dove of peace, very serene images. I always, from a very young age, I would use the woman as a symbol of strength and as a symbol of Mother Palestine. And so we see here a lot of symbolism, the road to liberation. I was very intentional in including both the Dome of the Rock and the Blue Dome Mosque, the Qibali Mosque, because we have this Israeli narrative that tries to only put attention on the Dome of the Rock Mosque as the entirety of Al Masjid Al Aqsa, which of course it's a very big, it's a very big masjid, and it's a very big land that includes many different religious sites. And so this was my very first drawing for Palestine. And I continued slowly to read more about Palestine, to understand the history. And I was really shocked by the amount of pain and sadness that my people held. And at that time, I still felt disconnected from them. I saw them as an unfortunate group of people who was living out a tragedy, and I was the lucky one who had escaped. And so here I using surrealism, I depict this idea, what's behind a Palestinian woman's strength. She's a mother to a martyr. She's the wife of an imprisoned, someone who's imprisoned, maybe with no charges, administrative detention. She is constantly harassed by these European colonialist soldiers. And in my early artworks, it was really about, the current situation and what's the dream situation. What do I wish was the case? And here we see that, the reality versus the dream. And like I said, very naive, very childlike drawings where I tried to symbolize, what Palestine was and the injustice and the beauty as well of what Palestine meant. At the same time, I was also becoming aware to what was happening in the region. And I always say that if I wasn't born Palestinian, I would still draw for Palestine, just like I draw for Syria, just like I draw for every people who are oppressed. And I think that's so important. And early Palestinian artists really focused on internationalism. They were always drawing comparisons between South Africa, between Vietnam, between what was happening in the West Bank and in Palestine. And so I have never shied away from tackling other struggles in the region, because their oppression is the Palestinian people's oppression and their freedom is the Palestinian people's freedom. And so I would use a lot of pencil and color to kind of depict, that the contrast between what is and what should be. Slowly, I began to read things like the autobiography of Malcolm X, which really woke me up to what white supremacy is, and how white supremacy is really at the core of what is happening in Palestine. I also began to use my art as a way to document what was happening. And so events would happen, and I would try to paint them or depict them through art as a kind of documentation of the history of my people. And so this was a very happy moment for me, where Samer al-Isawi, who I believe served the longest hunger strike in prison, over 250 days, he was freed. And so you see the doves behind him, and the colors and the joy. And of course, Israel, they rearrested him time and time again. So this moment was happy, and it was a moment of joy. But of course, as we know, the occupation doesn't want Palestinian joy. And so what you often find, even right now, in the prisoner swaps or the deals that release the Palestinian hostages, they will release them, allow them to celebrate, and then rearrest them before their weddings, before their graduations, before the moments of joy. But I was still a little bit naive. I was still with the mindset that, peace and love and unity and things will be okay. And I think as I grew up, I became more cynical. This depicted also something that happened in the Syrian refugee camp, Al Yarmouk camp, where a young girl starved to death. And of course, Al Yarmouk refugee camp is a Palestinian refugee camp. And it just seemed like wherever Palestinians are, whether it's in the refugee camps in Lebanon, in Syria, in Jordan, they are always oppressed, and they are always the victims of suffering on a level that's unnatural. And I think it's because Palestine is really the core of the region. If Palestine is free, I can assure you that all of the Arab regimes would fall, and all of the Arab people would be free. And so the Palestinian people, wherever they are always oppressed. At the same time, I was also learning to become proud of my identity. Growing up in the US, I had always felt so ashamed to be different, to have a mother who wore a headscarf, to be, not a white, blue-eyed, Caucasian who looks like everyone else. And so getting to know Palestine meant getting to know my religion and being proud of who I was, and being proud of my hijab that they hated so much, and understanding that Islamophobia was really created in order to justify what had happened to Palestine. So as mentioned, I used a lot of black and white and color to really get my point across. And my work really stemmed from a humanitarian place. I still didn't feel like I was Palestinian. I felt like ashamed to kind of claim that I was Palestinian, but I sympathized with these people, and I sympathized with this cause. I continuously tried with different mediums, coffee, and later on we'll see sand, salt. I always try to use symbolism to really, really evoke that sense of strength, the sense of we won't be defeated in my artwork. And this was in 2014, where Hamas and Fatah had decided to create a unity government. And it was also a moment of hope that finally the Palestinians will have a unified government. And unfortunately, this government never actually followed through, and it never actually committed to actually being a unified government. We see the corruption of the PA, and we see the corruption of Abbas, and how they're really just a proxy and a tool of occupation. But at that moment, I felt a lot of hope. And again, you see the black and white and the monochrome, and then you see the colors to really show the reality that I wish to see. And disconnected from what was happening in the region, and with the military coup of Egypt, and that literally happened in 2013, and then 2014 Gaza was being bombed again. And so everything that's happening in this region is just to serve this really colonial virus that is destroying all of the countries in this region. Here, this was in 2014 with the bombing, and that was really when I woke up to the idea that Gaza is miles away from me in Jordan. It's very close. It's hours away. And these people who could have been me are being bombed and obliterated for no reason. And it really just broke my heart. And it really shifted the way that I see the world. And so that's when I started using more blood in my artwork, being just very realistic and just wanting to evoke shock in the viewer. Like, I want to shock the viewer into action. Like, I want to shake the viewer and tell them, why aren't we doing more? This is so gory and this is so violent and this is so unfair. And this, of course, the last game depicts the 4 children, 10-year-olds, the Bekri boys, who were literally just playing football on the beach. And they were targeted by a Navy ship. Imagine a ship targeting 4 little boys playing football on the beach. And it really moved me. And just yesterday, we heard of the targeting of young men who were playing football in Ain al-Hilwa refugee camp in Lebanon. And so this is really an enemy, an occupation that just wants to snuff out any semblance of joy. This was actually my very first political cartoon that I did for Palestine. And I just want to mention, I have no formal education in art. And so everything was self-taught. And I was just discovering new styles as I went along. And so I didn't know the fundamentals of drawing a political cartoon, but it's just something that I did. And this was during the World Cup, where the whole world was, paying attention to these football matches, and no one was seeing the cries and screams of Gaza. This was to really, push the idea of BDS, boycotting, and it made me aware of the tools that we have in order to resist. This was another very simple cartoon that I tried to depict this idea of Western hypocrisy. And it was during the Charlie Hebdo shootings, where I believe 4 journalists were killed. And on the other hand, how many journalists have been targeted and murdered in Gaza over the years? And so my work took on a little bit more of a political aspect, very cynical, kind of really pointing out Western hypocrisy, and this idea that the West has any moral right to preach anything to us, just for me was mind-boggling, and I really wanted to point it out in my work. They had this March for Unity against terrorism for the Charlie Hebdo attacks, and you saw all the Arab leaders, including Mahmoud Abbas, alongside Netanyahu, who is the ultimate terrorist. So it was just very mind-boggling to me that the world accepts this as fact. And before October 7th, people really were brainwashed, accepted that this was okay. And so it was very frustrating for me at that time that the world was silent and the world just didn't get it yet. So here I wanted to take a more emotional approach. I saw and heard so many stories of these orphans in Gaza, and I wanted to depict the pain and the emotion that a child might be feeling because of the loss of a mother. And of course, it's something that we can't even comprehend. And so I drew this artwork, and this was the first artwork that I tied with poetry. And so I created this video that has poetry and artwork at the same time. And because of time, and there's a lot for me to show, I'm not going to show you the video, but you can, of course, see it on my YouTube channel or my social media. It's a 5-minute video poem of me drawing this little girl and the sadness just being built in her eyes because of this loss. Now, this was also a pivotal moment for me. If you remember Aylan al-Kurdi, the baby who washed on the shore of Turkey, he was a Syrian refugee. And just the image of this child on the beach, drowned, and the world is silent, just completely broke my heart. And this is a theme that I've used for Palestine, for Burma, for Sudan, to depict, the world we live in versus a world with humanity, just in the hope that it might pull at someone's heartstring. So through my work, I also, point to historical events. I try to visualize historical events in a way that that people can understand. Not many people understand what happened in Sabra and Shatila, and they think maybe it was a Lebanese civil type thing, Lebanese massacre of Palestinians, but it was actually Israel that put the spotlights on these Palestinians and allowed this massacre to happen. And many people, Piers Morgan says, when have you ever seen 1,000 people killed in a few hours? Referencing October 7th. Sabra and Shatila was literally over 2,000 people massacred in 1982 because of Israel. And so we need to be very aware of our history in order to clap back at these bigots that just want to frame the world from a Western lens. So this is Ahmed Dawabshe, and this is a story that really, really moved me. And I wanted to draw this artwork. And I also have some poetry to share. And I think it's very relevant to what happened in Gaza as well. So Ahmed al-Dawabshe was, he's not in Gaza. And this was before October 7th. They lived in a village in the West Bank called Douma. And Israeli terrorist settlers firebombed their house. And his baby brother was 1 year's 18 months, I think, was burned to death. And his mother and father were also burned to death. And he was the only survivor. And so I wrote this poem because I wanted to depict really the pain that this occupation creates, and that it's never about, Hamas. It's never about resistance. It's just about snuffing out any semblance of Palestinian life. And so I wrote this poem called Leftovers of Occupation, and it's very relevant to the images and the videos that we saw coming from Gaza of journalists being burned alive. This is nothing new. This has been happening since 2015, since 1948. This has been always happening, but we haven't been looking. So I'll read a little bit of the poem. They burned the baby. His father must have swallowed his tears, only to break in the dark. No, they burned the father too. They burned the baby. His mother's heart must feel as if they carved it out and left the wound to bleed. No, they burned the mother too. They burned the baby. His brother tried to save him. How empty his arms must be, never to hold him again. They burned the brother too, but he still lives. His life will be a hard one, left to mourn father, mother, brother. He is the torn leftover of occupation. But he will be okay. Where his mother's voice once comforted him, the gentle Mediterranean waves will whisper her songs. Where his father once guided him, the olive trees will root him in wisdom. And where his brother's laughter lifted him, each sunrise will return his joy. They burned the baby, but they did not burn Palestine. So that was an excerpt of the poem. And I always had this kind of duality. I would draw something completely heartbroken, and it would, and let's not forget that every artwork I was doing, I was looking at photo references, I was looking at videos. And this wasn't just me depicting the reality of a strange people. I was reflecting their experiences, but I was reflecting my own as a Palestinian. And so it was very, very hard for me sometimes to carry this weight and to see these images on a constant basis. And so I would always try to draw something that had strength and hope afterwards. And so you would see artwork like this that really depicted the strength of Palestinians. It was kind of me telling myself, you're strong. You can still depict Palestine, and Palestine will be free. You need to have faith. I'm very, very disappointed with the Palestinian leadership, Fatah, the PA, and of course this continues to grow. But this is something that I depicted at a time where a third intifada was breaking out during 2015. And during that time, there were a lot of, quote unquote, terrorist attacks and a lot of Western hypocrisy and just, this whole Western order that allows people like me to be killed and the world is silent. It was just very, very disappointing to wake up to the fact that we live in such a world. And as mentioned, my work took a little bit more of a political turn, and so I would approach subjects like Trump, like ISIS, and really radicalization. What does that mean? This is another moment of hope with Muhammad al-Qiq, who was a journalist and who also had a long hunger strike. And I was so happy to see that he's free now, and he was commentating on what's happening in Gaza. And so that just shows how resilient our people are. One year they're wasting away, starving to death in Israeli prisons. And the next, they're freed because of an action that a resistor took in Gaza. And now they're commentating on what's happening, and they're contributing to their people. And he might be imprisoned again, but he will be free, or someone else will be free, and they'll pick up that torch in a sense. And I became more bold in really using more violent depictions of what resistance can be. During 2016, there was the Intifada of the knife, where lone Palestinians in Jerusalem, in the West Bank, in 1948, quote unquote Israel, would commit knife attacks to really show their frustration of this ongoing occupation. And I didn't shy away from that. The West is always telling us, as Muslims, we are extremists, we are terrorists, we're not allowed to use violence, we're not even allowed to think about it or depict it. But here I was showing that these are our tools of resistance. So long as organizations like the United Nations are not giving us the justice we deserve, then we need to take it into our own hands. And so this just shows all the forms of resistance that anyone can take. A lot of my work really approaches U.S. and U.S. politics, given how the U.S. really plays such a big role in funding Israel and funding the genocides that Israel commits. This was one of my most viral artworks, just simply for depicting the idea they wanted to ban the call for prayer in Jerusalem. And so the Christian leaders were saying that if they ban the call for prayer from mosques, the churches will play the call for prayer. And I think for many people, it was a shift in mindset because, number one, not many people understand that there are Christians in Palestine that are being oppressed. And number two, that this was never a holy war. The problem never was that, you have these extremist Muslims who can't get along with anyone. Palestine was a holy land for Muslims, Jews, and Christians where they lived in harmony. But this colonial entity that was placed by the Western world in order to control the region, control our resources, control the Muslim and Arab populations, that was really the problem. And so, as mentioned, it was really one of my viral works that was shared very widely. Another one of my political works. Now, this is actually one of my favorite works, and I'd like to share the video for it. It was the first time that I really started to create abstract work, using more abstract figures and colors and emotions to depict what I felt for Palestine. And to this day, I still have this painting hanging. I refuse to sell it just because of what it meant to me. It was really me discovering the story of 1948 and me discovering the colors, the colors of my people, the emotions that they felt. So I'm going to play this for you.
Of a knife. Knives that are... Once, it was white, the color of the dove of peace that now evades our reach. Then came the black, the night, the oppression suffocating human rights and giving birth to the glint of a knife. Knives that are our tongues when the world is deaf to our alphabet. This is the intifada of the knife. And each intifada is the air we breathe, the way we're free, the way we see this life and death in response to strife. We carry wounds the color of rust, the blood of our ancestors left to oxygenate in dust, always to remind us that living isn't living if not through the lungs of our homeland. The intifada is us not forgetting. It is us remembering the yellow summer sun that supervised the Lidda death march, when babies nursed from dead mothers and elderly bodies fell one after the other, throats parched, praying for water, for dignity, for the intimacy of belonging to a home. Still parched, they walked, and we still walk this death march. It is us remembering the blood stacked up in piles from the British execution, the Haganah prosecutions, the Nakse, the Nakbe, the massacres of Jenin, Sabra, and Shatila, and Al Khalil. How bruised is Gaza, and how wary is Al Quds. Can you not see the blood? On their guns, on their tanks, on their hands, through their ranks, it turns into gasoline for the fires of our rage, teeth of fury erupting when our hearts can fit no more pain. We are made of limestone that cries and burns, but does not break. It is us remembering the sea that carried our boats and dead bodies from the port of Jaffa. We are still drifting in the sea, always drifting, waiting to wash upon the shore of Palestine. Wave after wave of sadness breaks upon the cliffs of our sanity. We are not free, and what is life without freedom? We are robbed of even our history. Bleak clouds occupy our beaches, and we wait, we wait, we wait for a blue sky and the gratification of a dream. The Intifada is a face for the faceless. Children who desperately try to fit smiles in the space between bullets. Children born with 75 years of wisdom and targets puncturing their foreheads. Children whose faces fade to the unknown. Too many to hold. Young Palestinians who are suspended in a scream of rage from throats of hearts that are forced to beat within a cage. Young Palestinians who sell their entire future for one moment of justice, one moment of dignity, of holding our head high and standing tall in victory, and the faces of patience, of hope, of the quiet calm of a cup of mint tea, of prayers at dawn, of a quiet truth that numbs the pain, eyes irrigated with tears producing gentle rain, the sadness that holds us all in one embrace. These are the colors of the Intifada, and we hold the brushes. We hold the brushes, the knowledge, the stones, the rhymes, the knives, the microphones to paint our way back home.
So that was the colors of the Intifada. And, you know, within the same style, I continued to create these kind of abstract acrylic paintings that, you know, told different parts of a story. So if you know Rachel Corrie and her story, and just reading her diary and her experiences in Gaza, and that really made me understand what it means to be an activist. And so I created this artwork for her as well as a video with a poem. You can also check that out. This was also one of my bigger works, Handala's Dream, where it really depicted these three greats of Palestinian art and culture and poetry and literature. So we have Handala, who was created by Naji Ali, and this iconic symbol for lost Palestinian childhood, who refuses to turn around until Palestine is liberated. And then you have Ghassan Kanafani and Mahmoud Darwish. And then you have Naji Ali in the distance, waiting for Handala to return and waiting for that free Palestine to come to existence. And this was also a video that merged both Arabic and English poetry. And we don't have much time, so I'm not going to show it, but definitely I would recommend watching it, because it really talks about the journey of art and liberation at the same time. And as you see, there's also abstract symbols here. We have the color red to depict a road that's full of blood, that's full of sacrifice. You have the apartheid wall and the expulsion of our ancestors in 1948. You have the color on the faces of these great artists and writers once, that sun of liberation will rise. So here I started to experiment a little bit with other materials. So this is a portrait created completely out of salt. And it was to really showcase the victory that the Palestinian prisoners in 2017 had. They had this hunger strike called Mayu Milih, water and salt, where they were only drinking water with salt. And even at that time, there was a salt challenge to raise awareness. These prisoners just wanted to be treated humanely. So they created this hunger strike. And it's so fascinating that even Gaza, so these were hunger strikers within Israel, within the West Bank, within these prisons, these awful prisons. But even in Gaza, restaurants in solidarity would serve water and salt to show their solidarity with these prisoners. And that just shows the beauty and the connection of all Palestinian people across apartheid walls, across fences, across checkpoints. Palestinians are united no matter how much they want to fragment us as a people. And so this was Marwan al-Barghouthi, who today, these days is being beaten so brutally because Israel does not want a leadership figure, to exist in the consciousness of young Palestinians. So this was also a video that you can watch later because we don't have time. But just
words
a
cannot
brief
express the tale of the cruelty of chains on a wrist, but maybe 1,000,000 grains of salt can. You are salt water mixed with air, mixed with blessed soil, mixed with ashes. You are not one man. You are not one heart that will age and fade away with time. You are the sea's eternal language, the tears of generations that continue to speak a story of love and loss.
So a lot of people tell me, why did you destroy the artwork? But I wanted to show that, Palestine isn't one person. It's not about a figurehead. Palestine is a cause, and it'll continue to be reborn in different people. So this is Ahd Tamimi. We know the very courageous young woman who slapped a soldier, defended her brother, and then was thrown in jail as a 17-year-old. Razan al-Najjar, who a sniper targeted her as a nurse working in 2018 in Gaza during the Great March of Return. Of course, people who aren't aware of Gaza and Palestine don't understand that Palestinians have tried every single form of resistance. Gazan leadership called for these peaceful marches of return as a form of peaceful protests. And what happened? Israel targeted the knees of young children. Israel targeted nurses and journalists. And so this was happening long before October 7th. And here we see I'm using more digital artwork. So all of these works were digital artwork. I was kind of exploring other mediums. This is one of my favorite works as well. And some people tell me it's a little bit, it makes them feel uncomfortable. But I that's something I want people to feel a little bit uncomfortable of that. Yes, we are proud that in our wombs, we are creating future resistors. And that's not something that we should be ashamed of. And that's something beautiful, that this blessed land, the womb of this blessed land, will continue to bring out fighters and resistors until Palestine is free. This depicted a child in Gaza who, instead of being warm in her bed, was on a morgue cold surface, and this was in 2019. And so just many digital artworks that depicted as well Western hypocrisy, as we mentioned before, other things happening in the region, Sudan, and we all know what's happening right now in Sudan because of Israel, because of the UAE, because of these allies. Just different depictions that just showed. Here, I use the dove in a different way. The dove of peace is dead. There's no such thing as a dove of peace, given these deals that are happening to really continue the expulsion, the Nakba of the Palestinian people from the Balfour Declaration 1917 until today. I wanted to experiment with other mediums, so I loved using, body art and using my face, my Palestinian face that depicts who I am and my identity in order to tell the story as well, my story. Also, this video, We Are Enough, was really a love letter to all Palestinian women. And wanting, young Palestinian women to feel loved and accepted, but it's really a love letter to all women. And so this video also won international prizes, and I got to stand in the United Nations wearing my Palestinian embroidery, receiving the award for this video. So I also hope that you can watch that as well. And this is a little bit more of the body art I was talking about, representing the journalists that were continuously shot in their eyes, but really it's not the journalist who is blind, it's humanity that's blind to these crimes. I also began experimenting in sand art, and sand art is one of my favorite mediums now. So I do performances using sand, shifting it to tell the story of my people. And I find that sand is such an organic, beautiful material to tell this story of, my ancestors who are descendants of Canaanites, who are the most ancient people, and to tell the story of this holy land that's really, it precedes all Western civilization, really. So this was another, I'll show you briefly a part of it. This is an example of the sand art that I did for Gaza.
حامل لعب صغير بإيده، حامل حلم وأمل كبير، وعيدي تعيدها بعيده، حوشها الطفل صغير، وبيلعب في البيت وأهله مبسوطين، شايفينه بيكبر على مهله، واخوانه زيه حلوين، لما يشوف ولاد يرفعوا الطفل الماضي يصيح روح الأرض بيسير مليان جنبي ألعاب يصير وما فينا حب قتلوك وبلا أسباب قتلوك وما إلى السن. So I don't want to show the whole video because really there's not much time. So I'm just going to go through the rest of the artwork, but definitely you can check, my social media pages to see more of the work that I've had. But I just wanted to highlight this was actually a very important artwork that I did that drew the intersectionality between Native American struggle, Indigenous people all around the world, Palestinians and Black Americans, with the killing of George Floyd. And this artwork really went viral because people never really connected the three struggles in this way. And I named it Black Lives Matter because I didn't want to shift the attention from that very important movement and kind of hijack it for Palestinians. I just wanted to give it really the moment that it deserved. And I did many work, relating to that. And then also during COVID. So I have many artworks over the years that document, that evoke emotion, that show Western hypocrisy, campaigns that I did with different organizations. And these were the works that I started to create with October 7th and seeing what was happening in Gaza. No red lines, of course, for Palestinians, there are no such thing as red lines. Israel has absolute impunity to do what they want. And this was after the accounts of the rape of women in Ashifa Hospital. So many different artwork. And this is probably my favorite artwork that I've done. And in this artwork, it's very gruesome. And I wanted it to be shocking for people because we reached a point where we were getting desensitized to the photos of the blood and the limbs of Palestinian children. And so I wanted the viewer to just stop and take a look at what's happening. So we have this child who's Palestinian, who's cut in half, and we have this child who is picking up a soccer ball from the roof. So one child has limbs being flown on the roof because of the impact of the rocket, and one child is simply, as they should be, picking up this ball to really represent the contrast between the innocence of the childhood that should be and the reality that Gazan children really face. So this is under the same sky, on the same rooftop. This is really happening. We're living under the same sky. We're living in the same earth, and this is happening right next to us. And this could be our children. So that also has a video. So I also do a lot of things with my art center. We do a lot of workshops to really allow the new generation to connect with their Palestinian identity. And we're also working on products that anyone can buy to really learn about the symbols of Palestine, the cactus, the olive branch, the orange, the flag, the dove of peace or revolution. So all of these things are things we're working on right now. And I continuously travel the world and speak about Palestine. And I just wanted to share this picture to end. I'm sorry, I went over my time, but so this was me as I was grappling with my identity in the United States, putting on this sash that says Palestine just because my parents told me I was from Palestine, but I didn't understand what it meant. And then we have a picture of my daughter, who I named Yafa, after the homeland that was robbed from me, and really having the aim to create a future activist in her, and that if I don't see a free Palestine, then she will, or she will raise her children to see that free Palestine. And so that's something really important to me, and I hope to translate in my art as a new mother. So that's all. These are, the accounts that you can find some of my work in. And I hope I didn't bore you with all of my work. And I hope it was beneficial in seeing how a Palestinian's feelings and emotions and mind can shift through artwork. It was a journey for me, and art really allowed me to grow as a Palestinian, as a human being. So I hope you enjoyed.
Ok, muito obrigada, Lina, pela sua valiosa contribuição e pela profundidade de sua reflexão, do seu trabalho. Sua fala e seu trabalho enriquecem imensamente o nosso debate. É na dimensão poética que a arte revela sua força, uma potência de denúncia da negação do direito à existência, capaz de confrontar as violências imperial, racial e capitalista que moldam as nossas geografias e nossas vidas. Belo trabalho, muito obrigada. Agora nós vamos para o momento de diálogo com o público e abriremos um espaço para uma conversa. Temos no chat alguns comentários, algumas perguntas. Como estamos falando em idiomas diferentes, este não é o nosso limite, né? As línguas, elas abrem novos caminhos para a escuta.
I will make the translation, okay, Lina? Now we will open the space for conversation with the public. We have some comments and questions for the chat. We are communicating in different languages, but it's not a limitation for us. Language open paths to listening. I will read the questions for Juliana first, and then for Lina. Okay? Juliana, we have many heart emojis and comments expressing their gratitude for our reflections and participation. I thank your contributions beforehand, and I will read all the questions and comments for you, and then pass the word so you can answer. Okay?
Sorry, can you repeat, please?
Okay, the last part, or we will read all the comments and the questions. Okay? And then I will pass the speech for you, so you can answer it. All right? So the first comment is, art is a powerful weapon for denouncing all of the things you said. I'm gonna read the questions now, okay?
Okay.
The first question is, how can Palestinian cinema, building upon the legacy of films like Salt of the Sea, act even more decisively as a form of archival resistance for cultural identity and memories against silence. You can see the question on the screen too. And the second one is, could you elaborate on how art in general may have become a territorial resistance, memory, reconstruction, and reconnection with Palestine?
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say congrats to Lina for her job. Such an incredible work. And I was thinking here about the parallels with the filmmaker Animahi Jassir and the Soraya, the protagonist of the movie. And Lina lives this on his real life. So it's very interesting. Well, I am just a researcher, so I have the solidarity and the empathy, but I don't live these things in my skin. So the art can connect us to these questions that other people lives, and we can imagine, but we don't live the same. We can put ourselves in the shoes of other people, and we have to do this. And the art is such a important work for this. So coming back to the question about Palestinian cinema, I would say that contemporary Palestinian cinema, especially about south of DC, works as a form of archival resistance because it preserves exactly what the physical world of Palestine is constantly in danger of losing. So Palestinian filmmakers have always created images against disappearance. Today, in a digital landscape, cinema becomes an archive that cannot be bombed, confiscated, or sealed behind checkpoints. It safeguards stories, symbols, emotional geographies that the occupation tries to erase, but can't, because Palestinian people, Palestinian filmmakers resist, so can be erased. In south of the sea, for example, Animahi Jassir records the memory of Jaffa, the trauma of exile, and the everyday reality of borders, but also preserve material culture, the orange, the sea, the language, the house, in digital form. And these images become part of a collective memory that survives beyond the destruction of physical spaces. And digital cinema amplifies this will and allows Palestinians to reclaim naming, remembering, and narration their own history, forming a dispersed but resilient archive of identity. So contemporary Palestinian cinema doesn't just resist domination. It keeps the nation alive where the world insists on fragmenting.
Thank you, Juliana. Do you have anything
Obrigada,
more to say?
Juliana. Agradeço,
So we can
Juliana,
keep
né, pela
going.
sua contribuição. Certamente o seu trabalho, você se coloca como pesquisadora, né? Fomentará novas reflexões, né, para outras pessoas que desejam também trabalhar nessa perspectiva, para por nos mostrar a importância da construção, da memória e da identidade por meio do audiovisual. é captar para além das imagens. Temos perguntas para Lina, Polly.
Yes. First, I would like to thank Juliana for presentation. And now we are going to read the questions and comments for Lina. Okay? First, we have some comments. The first one is, Lina, your art connects me with the pain of Palestine in an emotional way. May we tear away the veil that blinds the world, break down the barriers, and use our voices. The second comment is, what an extraordinary work. The interplay between art and knowledge brings decoloniality into practice and inspires us to reinvent ways of learning, teaching, and existing. Lina, there is one person that wants you to answer the same question that was made for Juliana. You can see on the screen. Could you elaborate on how art in general may have become a territory of resistance, memory, reconstruction, and reconnection with Palestine? So if you could share your vision with us, that would be great.
Yes. Thank you for the comments and the questions. So art really, I know it kind of sounds, it sounds unbelievable that art can be a tool of resistance, an actual physical tool of resistance. But I think its importance really can't be understated. If you follow the Palestine poster project, you can just Google it. It depicts the posters that Palestinian artists would design dating back to the 1970s, 1980s, 1960s, that would really use art and design in order to, number one, tie Palestine with international causes like Vietnam, like South Africa, apartheid South Africa, but would also be used to rally Palestinians as a people. You know, these posters were used to announce the meeting places for resistors and for strikers. So it really was an actual tool that Palestinians used in order to unify themselves, in order to, form their resistance and form, global awareness about this cause. The way that I used Palestine art and the way that I benefited from art was also that it's really an intergenerational memory transmission. And so we saw the painting by Tamam al-Akhal that depicted the 1948 Nakba of Jaffa and how that awakened Palestine in me. And I'm sure that one of my artworks might awaken Palestine in another young teenager who feels lost and who doesn't understand their identity. And so it's about, one generation passing it on to the next generation. And that's all, as allies, I think that's the most important thing that we need to do, is to continue to keep Palestine alive. And when you hear resistors talking about why October 7th was necessary, it's because the world had forgotten Gaza. The world had forgotten Palestine. The Abraham Accords, made it so even Arab countries were normalizing. Palestine was completely forgotten. People had gotten used to the idea that Israel is here to stay. Palestinians are going to eventually fade away. We're going to continue to ethnically cleanse them from within 1948 borders, from the West Bank, as settlers continue to expand. As Gaza, they continue to mow the lawn every few years. And so Palestine was going to be forgotten. And that's what we need to collectively work to ensure never happens. And now I feel like the world is awake. And this is in part due to the tireless work all those years before October 7th, all those years before the media cared about Palestine, the work of poets, artists, writers, people who made, films and literature about Palestine tirelessly through those years when it wasn't popular, when it wasn't a trend. They are the ones that kept Palestinian alive. And so that's really the importance
art and what it has done for this cause. And it'll continue to do so until Palestine is free. And hopefully then we can draw beautiful, landscapes of Palestinian countryside, of the Dome of the Rock, these beautiful landscapes without blood, without anything, hopefully then we can reach that level. But until then, art will continue to educate, inform, evoke emotion, and humanize Palestinians.
Perfect, Lina. That's it.
Muito obrigada, Lina. Temos mais questões, muitos comentários.
We have one more question for Lina. Lina, when art and knowledge reinvent us against systems that silence, what shifts arrive in how we learn and resist?
I think the shift that happens is that we begin to unlearn the hierarchies that silence us, really. When art and knowledge intersect, it creates something so powerful in that, number one, we can really defy the systems of oppression that exist. We can call them out. We can show the hypocrisy. And number two, we can also visualize, the world that should exist, or the world that can exist. I believe that artists really have this superpower. We can visualize what's the unseen. We can visualize things that aren't in existence. And I think what the colonial powers really want to do is erase the hope in us, to erase our ability to even visualize ourselves as the indigenous people, as reclaiming our homeland, as returning to our homeland. And so when we visualize these things, when we truly believe that we are the true owners of the land, when we believe that a colonial regime can be defeated, that's really when we reclaim our power. Because the whole point of colonialism is to really erase the indigenous people and erase their desires, their dreams, their ability to see themselves as anything but the victim.
Você deseja comentar algo, Juliana?
Well, no, I already sent my congrats to Lina work, and I am reflecting about the theoretical books that I read and read constantly, and is so important. I was thinking about the body art about Lina, and the Palestinian body is so important to the representation. And I am trying to think in a word in English. I am already thinking in Portuguese, sorry. But yes, it's so important to make this visible and present. And the rest, Lina already says. And yes, I am just reflecting so much about the question of the cinema, Palestinian cinema, and the theoretical writers. And Lina shows this in her real life, living this, So yes, it's so important. And I know there is, it's painful, but it's very beautiful too. We can admire this resistance, and we can join this resistance. Even if we are not Palestinian people, we can. We are humans, so this is a very valid cause. Well, I think that
We
I
have another
already,
question.
yes, I already
Okay.
said about this.
We have one more question for both of you. Okay.
Okay.
How can art, cinema, and narratives combat this slater colonialism?
Well,
Dina, would you like to answer first, or Juliana?
someone says in the comment, your art make me more close to this cause by the emotional way. So I think in the case of art, the sensibility, the emotions, because we consume this kind of content in a different way, for example, than, for example, news and things that explain the facts, or sometimes distort make a distortion about the facts. So the art put us in a different local, in a different place, that we can feel. And when we can feel, we can understand more sometimes, because it's about what I said in some minutes ago. We are humans, so if we feel like the other, maybe we can understand a little bit more the other. I think in the case of art is this.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was going to mention the fact that art humanizes, and really art is kind of like the free people's voice. You know, we live in this global order where we have media that's controlled by very rich, very powerful people, and so any artist can oppose the narrative that the media is saying, and allow people to pause and to humanize Palestinians. And for a long time, it really bothered me that I had to work so hard to humanize myself, or to humanize my people to the world, of like, why don't you see me as human anyway? But especially with post 9/11, with the war on terror, with Muslims, and really being depicted as these extremist terrorists, it was really important for me to show Palestinians as like the different artworks that I showed you, as a orphan without a mother, who misses her mother, or a mother who's losing her child, or really evoking these emotions that anyone can relate to, and feel. And so, like Juliana said, it's how can we allow the world to stop scrolling, or stop seeing Palestinians as just numbers? Okay, 2,000, 10,000, 20,000. The fatalities keep increasing, but they're not just numbers. They're people with stories, with emotions. And so that's what the power of art can really do. And I just really wanted to thank Juliana and everyone here today, because although I was born Palestinian, I feel like all of you are not Palestinian by birth, but you're Palestinian by soul and by choice, and through the activism that you're doing. And please don't ever feel like what you're doing is not important, because we saw the activists, the encampments in the United States, activists like Aaron Bushnell, so many different people around the world who really made waves and made a real impact. And the people of Gaza were so appreciative of all of these people standing for them and making a difference and raising their voice. Like Francesca Albanese, for example, she's not Palestinian, but all the work that she's doing, Juliana, the research she's doing, she's not Palestinian. She's never, I don't know if you've ever been to Palestine, but you still have this connection to Palestinians as a cause, as a human cause. And I think that's something beautiful. And I really want to thank everyone here today, because you're taking your time to really be as human as possible, and support this cause. And one day we'll look back, and you'll be able to tell the world that I stood on the right side of history when it wasn't easy.
Beautiful, Lina.
Mara-
Thank you.
Maravilha.
Thank you, Lina.
Polly,
Okay.
obrigada, Lina, obrigada, Juliana. Polly, pergunte a Lina, por favor, se é a criança que apareceu antes de iniciarmos a live, se é a filha.
Okay. Lina, the child who was with you in the beginning, is she your daughter? Magnolia wants to know.
Yes, that's my daughter. Her name is Yafa. I named her after my homeland. I'm just sad that my grandfather passed away before seeing her, because it was almost a tribute to him, because
Yeah.
he made me love Yafa, and the homeland he never got to return to. But yeah, I'm raising her to be a strong Palestinian woman.
Uhum.
Ela
Que eu
disse que
percebi
sim,
também.
que é filha dela, que o nome é Yafá, em homenagem, né? E que ela sente pelo avô, né, não ter conseguido conhecer a filha dela, já que foi quem inspirou ela a amar tanto.
Que lindo. Percebi também na arte de Lina a presença de crianças, né? Pode, você tem como fazer a tradução, por favor, dos dois comentários?
Faço
Dentre
sim.
outros, né? Daqueles dois comentários.
Lina, there are some comments on the chat for you. The first one is, Lina, you introduce us such sensibility through your art, sensibility to understand the human dimension that try to annihilate the Palestine. And the second one, congratulations on the wealth of details in this journey through memory. Juliana and Lina allowed us to see much of the Palestinian reality through the eyes of art. A wonderful combination.
Nice, thank you.
Ok.
Great questions, by the way. Like, it's obvious that the audience is very much like aware of the cause. Very deep questions.
Nós estamos chegando aos momentos finais da nossa mesa. Foi muito bom ter vocês aqui, certo? Agradeço profundamente, a Lina, a Juliana, pelas contribuições sensíveis e críticas que ampliaram o nosso horizonte e fortaleceram, o nosso diálogo. O diálogo que nós buscamos fazer aqui, tá? Palestinidades, ela ecoa em diversos locais. E aí eu gostaria de convidá-las para o momento mesmo final, para as apreciações finais. E aí, essas considerações finais, se vocês puderem comentar, né, a potência da arte e do cinema, como são poderosas, né, na denúncia da tragédia colonial de Israel. Lina e Juliana.
Well, we reached the end of our meeting. I'm deeply grateful to the speakers for their critical and sensible contributions, which broadened our horizon and strengthened the dialogue that we seek to build. Palestinians echoes in many places. At this time, I invite the speakers to present their final considerations. Maggie also asked you to talk a little bit about how art can empower this fight for Palestine. We can start with Juliana with her final considerations and then Lena, if that's okay.
Okay. Well, thank you for this invite and this connection with Lina. I already said about the meaning of the art, so I think that I will just translate what I already said. Magnolia, certo? Eu havia dito em inglês que a arte nos coloca nesse contato com... E a Lina também falou sobre isso. Muitas vezes nós vemos as notícias e números e informações e números, né? Que nos tiram a capacidade de ver o outro como um ser humano. Então, a arte muitas vezes nos coloca nesse lugar de sensibilidade e de sentir como o outro. Então, nesse caso, é uma arma poderosa para realmente tornar o outro mais humano, e não apenas números e notícias tristes que, infelizmente, o mundo já está acostumado, né? O mundo já está acostumado a ver esse tipo de informação e se tornou algo normal. E muitas vezes, por meio da arte, por meio de um filme, ou, por exemplo, como por meio da arte da Lina, em que nós temos contato com as vivências dela enquanto uma mulher palestina, acho que a arte é capaz de nos fazer sentir mais, e sentindo mais, nós somos mais capazes de nos colocar no lugar do outro, né? E nós saímos desse lugar de meros espectadores de números e levantamentos e coisas que nos desconectam com o outro enquanto ser humano.
Okay, Lina, you can start with your final considerations.
I just wanted to say that like recently with what's happening in Gaza, the ceasefire, the quiet resumption of killing of Palestinians quietly that has been happening before October 7th, it's been very hard for me. It's been very heavy for me to see this resume and the world kind of go back to their daily lives. So I'm very appreciative that there are still events like this. And I hope that we build on the momentum and continue to talk about Palestine and to take real action for Palestine. And it was also, I'm appreciative because it allowed me to look at my work. And so often I feel like I'm not doing enough. And so often I feel so tired carrying this burden, feeling like, what can I do for my people? Does art really help? And so these are questions I've faced myself. And I do believe that art does have an effect. And if I'm able to inspire one person with an artwork, evoke emotion for a Palestinian, create a shift in someone who might become an activist, who might become someone important in this cause, I think that I'm happy with my work. And it's a therapy for me as a Palestinian to use art as a sense of agency and as a tool against my occupier. And I just want to say, like, please try to support artists in Gaza who, despite their horrible circumstances, are trying to continue to create artwork. As much as you can, try to really uplift these voices that aren't often heard, and to support the continuation of creation of the art of Palestinians, because it's very important for the world to see what Palestinians have to say, the culture that they convey, the history that they educate about, and the future that they also visualize through their artwork.
Thank you, Lina.
Obrigada, thank you. Agradeço mais uma vez a vocês. Também quero agradecer aos proponentes desse simpósio, Evanides Teixeira e Edmário, as tradutoras Laena e Poliana, a comissão organizadora do evento e a todas as pessoas que permaneceram conosco até aqui, tecendo esse espaço de reflexão e resistência.
I express my gratitude for the proponents of the symposium, Evanides and Edmário, the translators, Laena and Poliana, myself, the organizing committee of the event, and all the people who stayed with us until now, leaving the space for reflection and resistance. I also take this opportunity as a translator to say that I learned a lot from all of you. Thank you so much.
Informamos também, que esse simpósio terá mais 2 mesas, Oriente-se pelo Cinema, Sensibilidade, Resistência e Memória, que acontecerá amanhã, dia 21 de novembro, e Artes, Narrativas e Ativismo Digital Palestino, que acontecerá dia 27 de novembro. O 6º Congresso Internacional Brasil em Teias Culturais de Palestinidade continua até o dia 19 de dezembro. As inscrições para o ouvinte se encerram dia 21 de novembro. E, mais uma vez, muito obrigada a vocês. Palestina Livre!
Free Palestine. Thank you so much.